Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network, and brought to you by Roughneck Scarves and Icarus FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and today I am joined by Mikka Burrell. Mikka, what's going on?
Not much. Enjoying my Labor Day off. Still laboring for the pod, though, but I love it. So it's all good.
Yeah, staying hard at work for the pod. And I mean, obviously, let's be real. It's a lot less work on a long weekend after a dub on Saturday.
Absolutely.
And we're also joined by Christian Canales. Christian, welcome back, man.
What's up? I'm feeling a big burden lifted off my shoulder this weekend, and it's not just the haircut.
Yeah, you guys can't see at home, but Christian was rocking like a pretty mean quarantine. I don't even know.
Do.
Yeah,
just call it a do.
Just the flow, and so he's a little bit lighter now, and definitely that. Gosh, what a burden off the shoulders with that win this weekend. We've got plenty to talk about today, but first, I just wanted to acknowledge this is on. For all intents and purposes, our 50th episode of Seriously Loco since the start last year. I mean, Christian, like since the beginning, obviously a lot has changed. A lot has happened with the club and with us. But it's been a pretty crazy ride for these 50 episodes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so my first memory of Seriously Loco is our little spot on Tipton's show. Before the season, and you didn't know my name at that point. You literally didn't know my name when we were trying to introduce ourselves. So we've come a long way.
That is true, and it was because we met that day, I think.
Yes, 30 minutes before we went on the air.
That was that was madness. That's really funny, but I definitely know your name, and I mean, from now, like it's been cool because I know like. Especially, me and Mikka are more of like the hardcore like soccer fans, I guess. But you, in a lot of ways, represent, I think, a lot of a big segment of USL fans in that you don't necessarily like follow soccer first, but you're learning and growing along with kind of the team that you follow.
Yeah, and I think it helps, to kind of start at the same level as a lot of people, This is the first professional team that a lot of people, in our age demographic that live in El Paso have had. Last time I went to a Patriots game, I was 3 years old, in a stroller or something like that. So being able to have started kind of at the ground floor and, be a part of this and kind of grow along with the club and, has just been really cool. It's been a really cool opportunity. I'm glad that, we get the assistance that we do from the club. They're pretty hospitable, with getting us players and getting us, press credentials, all that kind of stuff. And it's been great to be a part of that.
Mikka, I mean, you've come in, you've obviously kind of taken on the mantle in terms of the press coverage and all that stuff with my relocation. But just, obviously we also kind of poached you, I think, in many ways. You were our first free agent signing after the pod got started. So how's it been for you since it got going?
Yeah, I moved to a Seriously Loco FC on a Bosman. I think I made my debut on episode 6, and now we're at episode 50. That's mental. It's been so much fun. I know I basically invited myself onto the pod, but you all decided to put up with me and keep me. So I'm really thankful for that. It's honestly been a blast. I mean, especially this season, being credentialed and being able to cover the games from, the perspective of somebody who's a part of the press has been really awesome, especially in this weird season like no other. So,
yeah.
But yeah, shout out to the listeners who have listened to us from the beginning and have seen us through our growing pains. I know we used to have some, telenovela, murder sounds in the background. I think we've grown, then we moved into Baki Studios, and now we've come a long way in terms of the quality. So, it's awesome. Big 5-0.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, thanks to all the listeners that download all those like morning after commuters who wake up nice and early and listen to the episode, and we just appreciate it so much, and all you that engage with the podcast, because it allows us to do some cool stuff, and we've had some really cool opportunities as a result. So we're just going to keep working, and well, here's to the next 50.
Cheers.
But Locomotives win on Saturday, not the only win in El Paso. And I know there's a lot of listeners out there who are also UTEP football and basketball fans. And in this case, UTEP football down on their luck program, a little bit of a bad news Bears vibe. I don't know, Little Giants, like they've just been struggle city recently, but we got to give a shout out because El Paso, as you said, Mikka, El Paso is goated. Locomotive and UTEP football winning on the same night.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, full disclosure, I don't follow UTEP nearly as closely as I probably should, but I know that the UTEP dub is kind of a rare occurrence, and for UTEP and Locomotive to win on the same night it's pretty incredible. And UTEP did have fans there, so that was nice. The Locomotive press dugout was pretty empty as a result, but I'm happy for UTEP, especially since we kind of like dunked on them last time out. So
yeah.
Sorry to all the Miners out there, but congratulations on the win.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely not paying attention, all things considered, because I was very dialed into the Locomotive game. But it was funny following along on Twitter and seeing kind of the reaction of a lot of our normal kind of, whether press or fans, like reacting to the fact that UTEP may actually win a football game. I mean, Christian, it's Stephen F. Austin. Does that take away from this at all, or is it just one for UTEP fans to enjoy?
I don't think so. I mean, a win is a win. No one can deny that the program has struggled. So, you got to start with the small victories. There's no reason to not be happy about it. I think it's something to celebrate. It's somewhere to start.
It is somewhere to start, and I think we've got a place to start now for Locomotive as we get into talking about this win on Saturday. I mean, Christian, we can start with you, but something about this win over New Mexico United, it was a game. It's a game that's filled with emotion. It's obviously a rivalry in terms of, regionally, they're one of the closer teams to El Paso. And the manner in which this went down, where we go behind, we equalize, we go behind again, we tie it, and then eventually find that late winner. There was a lot of emotion within the game, kind of rivalry aside. And then was this just the way that first win over New Mexico United had to happen?
I think so. It wasn't... I was happy with the way that happened, like you said, just kind of back and forth as far as the scoring goes. I was happy that I was there for it. I was happy that I decided to make the trip out for that one. And I think that, I was glad it happened the way that it did, because it wasn't a game that was kind of riddled with like ref drama, which is something that, we've come across a lot. I'm glad that didn't necessarily come into play. There wasn't, there was emotions on the field, but, they were playing physical, but no one got hurt. So there was a lot of positives from the match, I think, besides the result. The way that it happened was a big plus.
Mikka, Christian touched on it there. It had the feel of a rivalry in a lot of ways. I think 7 bookings were handed out in the end, 3 for Locomotive and 4 for New Mexico United. It had kind of that proper rivalry or derby, if you like, kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, and another penalty too. So that's 4 out of 5 in this fixture. Yeah, I mean, it was the atmosphere was great, and you know, speaking of atmosphere, we did have double the attendance that we had from last time out. 1,500 fans were there. They did sell out their capacity, and they were plenty loud. I mean, I watched the highlights back, of course, to see what it looked like from TV, and you could even hear it on TV as well. So yeah, proper derby atmosphere. New Mexico technically were the home side, but I don't think they felt that way. You know, it never felt, even though we didn't lead them until the very end, it never really felt like they were comfortable, if we could say that. So,
right.
Shout out to the fans, because I really think they had a lot to do with the result, honestly.
And Christian, I mean, you sat amongst the fans and kind of experienced that firsthand. How was the experience for you with the doubled capacity and kind of all of the different stipulations from the club and the processes for making sure that everyone's safe? How did that go as a fan?
I think it went pretty well. You know, it's obviously not a normal game. You know, you can tell that there's not 8,000 people or, you know, whatever the situation was last year, but there was still plenty of noise, still plenty of atmosphere. I liked it because, you know, I think that it made the drums and stuff from Eighth Notch that seem a lot louder than when you have kind of the ambient noise of several thousand people in the air too. I thought that, you know, getting into the stadium was not a hassle. The smaller crowd numbers, I'm sure, help with that too. But, you know, took your temperature, all that kind of stuff. My biggest complaint was the limited concession items, but, you know, I'll gladly give that up to be able to see a match this year. I also thought the dismissal process was a little, I don't know how to fix it, but it was just a little strange. What stood out to me, they didn't mention it at all at any point, like before the game or during the game. So, like, you know, there's 5 minutes of extra time. So 94:59 shows up on the clock and everyone's at the exits and the staff isn't ready to like stop them. So, you know, there's still, I don't think that went how maybe they're hoping it would go. So that's something that I would maybe fix. And then, I think they need to disclose the departure order when you're buying your tickets, because I unfortunately was like one of the last ones to leave. It was kind of funny just waiting there for my section to be called. But overall, it was good. It was good.
Yeah. The players and staff were probably at home already by the time you got out of
probably.
there. No, I think it is kind of a strange thing, because obviously a lot of these protocols and everything are put in place now, but the way to communicate them and the way to actually enforce them is tough. I know Duke gave a little bit of a shout out. It did seem as if most people were adhering pretty well to wearing their masks the whole game and observing the social distancing and everything. So it seemed from that perspective and from the perspective of, you know, keeping things safe during this pandemic, it seemed like the club did a pretty good job, and the fans, you know, contributed to it being a safe environment for everyone. So kind of a weird performance tonight from the team. When you look at the numbers and everything, something that's become a little bit more prevalent, it seems, this season from Locomotive is they're possessing the ball a little bit less than we're used to. We're used to have them having, you know, loads and loads of the ball. We're used to them having somewhere in the realm of like 80 or more % passing accuracy. It's pointed out a lot in broadcasts and everything like that. But I mean, Mikka, in this one, possession was about even. Passing accuracy was about the same between the two teams. I think Locomotive was somewhere in 77%. New Mexico was about 74% or something like that. But the real difference, and something that we've talked a lot about on the pod before, was shot volume. And in this case, Locomotive have 21 shots in the game to, I believe, 8 for New Mexico United. And so creating that different shot volume, do you think that Locomotive is getting a little bit more pragmatic in the way that they play? Or do you think that it's just a symptom of them getting more comfortable playing in the system that they've kind of set out to play here?
Interesting. I've never thought of it as being pragmatic. I guess I always connect the word pragmatic with like bunkering and like, you know, 2 banks of 4 and just defend. No. Maybe pragmatic in the attack, but right. Yeah, I mean, I think that they are certainly moving away from this kind of like side to side, pass it in a U shape that we could kind of get caught in last season. But not necessarily giving up the possession game. I think this fixture in particular, it's hard to like draw a lot of conclusions for me, at least from the possession stats, because there's just this extra edge to the rivalry that I think that you know, some of that tactical, those principles kind of go out the window a little bit with the, you know, as the temperature of the game starts to rise, as the tackles start to fly in.
Right.
But you can still tell that these are 2 different teams, 2 different identities. So yeah, I guess pragmatic in the sense that we are just trying to take our chances on goal and put these teams under pressure, especially the way we came out in the second half. So, right. But yeah, over double the shots, over double the chances created as well, which, you know, this New Mexico United side, Kalen Ryden aside, I don't think that they're the strongest defensively, but, you know, it was nice. It was nice to dominate them, even not necessarily dominating the ball, I guess you could say.
Right. Well, and a lot was talked about during the match as well, Christian, with the fact that it was a chess match between Mark and Troy Lesane, and they're trying to feel each other out. To me, it felt a little bit like, to use, I think, a pretty common analogy, it felt like a boxing match in a lot of ways, where Locomotive was maybe the aggressor in terms of they were the ones like kind of on the front foot trying to create things, but New Mexico United defended well and then like look for their openings. And that first goal, you know, speaks to it, where they didn't have a ton of chances, but when they had their opportunities, they take it. Does that kind of capture what this is for you, where these 2 managers are really trying to, it's almost like boxers, where it's like Mayweather Pacquiao, I guess, where like Pacquiao's looking for his opening, like for a knockout blow, where Mayweather is, in this case, Locomotive, just constantly landing like soft punches, I guess, or keeping them at bay. Is that kind of the vibe that you get from this type of matchup?
Yeah, I think so. You know, there's a lot of, just to keep the analogy going, just a lot of, you know, punching and counter punching. And the goals that they scored on us, you know, the first one especially is just one of those things where you just mess up once and there's the, you know, you get knocked down. I'll stop with the boxing analogy now. But, yeah, so it wasn't anything that, like you said, that they just outplayed us on either of the goals that they scored. They both just happen when we get caught asleep. So yeah, I think that tactically it was very evenly matched, and all the numbers show it too. That, you know, it was just a matter of, you know, who's gonna make the last, who's gonna get the last shot.
Right. Yeah. In this one too, there was a little bit of we've talked a lot about Brian Rebillon's transition into midfield. As we talk about the lineup a little bit, heading into this one, the midfield we'd often talked about in terms of giving Brian the best chance of success in a new role has been with kind of the most experienced guys. But this time around, we see Richie is in there in his normal, you know, number 6, like defensive midfielder position. But he starts alongside Chapa instead of, we saw Distel last time out. But in this match, I mean, Mikka, the Brahim and Chapa midfield ahead of Richie. Richie not having his best game, as we talked about during the game, but Brahim and Chapa next to each other kind of worked in this one.
I think it did. Yeah. It seemed like the instruction from Mark Lowry was for Brahim and Chapa to kind of coordinate that press together. Being on the side of the field that I saw a lot more of Chapa on the night, and my goodness, he was aggressive from the first whistle, just getting into his opposing man's face a lot, winning those second balls and keeping the ball in play or forcing it off of them into touch. It seemed like Brahim was doing a lot of the same stuff on the other side. So with those two being able to press and then Richie kind of anchoring and shielding that back line, it seemed like a very interesting choice from Mark Lowry, but one I think ultimately that worked, some of Richie's passing notwithstanding.
Yeah. Well, and Brahim struggled a little bit too in that regard. Once again, just a little bit lower on the passing completion than what we're used to in midfield for Locomotive. But yeah, that combination, and I think, in a lot of ways, Christian, like the best we've seen of Chapa, kind of like what Mikka talked about, like the best we see of Chapa is when he's being aggressive. I feel like when he's reacting or when he's asked to be a little bit more passive in his role, that's where we don't see him succeed. So, in this one, did his aggression kind of give him maybe a little more license to follow his instincts rather than kind of react to what's going on around him?
Yeah, I think so. Cause I think that for how young he is and kind of the level of experience that he's at, I think that just that instinctive, just go out there and, run is a lot more suitable than having him try to read the game. I just don't think he's there yet. He'll get there at some point, I'm sure. But right now, I think that if those are his instructions, to just kind of do what your job is to get the ball off of them kind of thing, and just do whatever you need to do that.
Yeah. I think his instincts are really good as a midfielder. He's a really strong player. He's improved technically a lot, I think, in the off season. But Chapa as a kind of like, I guess I don't want to say he's not intelligent, because that's like the wrong vibe. But as a really kind of like thoughtful midfielder, that's not really the strength of his game, I don't think, at this moment. Like you said, Christian, I think he's best when he's able to use his energy, able to use his kind of his just natural instinct out there, instead of trying to be really cerebral and like see the like 4D chess or whatever. Like if he's sent out with simple instructions, he's in a better place. The first half of this game, guys, like it felt a little bit like Groundhog Day when it comes to New Mexico United, where we are so sharp in certain games against other teams, and we look like, okay, like, yeah, we can really give New Mexico a fight. And then something as simple as a corner kick, our attacking corner kick immediately turns into a chance and ultimately a goal for New Mexico United. Mikka, we concede from our own corner. This is something that you just hate to see from any team that you're rooting for. But in this case, watching it happen specifically against United, it felt like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah, it's so, I struggle with this particular sequence, because my instinct, of course, is to criticize the team for leaving that much space and kind of falling asleep in trying to get the ball back. But at the same time, like, we've been asking for them to commit numbers in the box for these corner kicks, now that we have a dead ball specialist in Dylan Mars and a bunch of tall heads to aim at in, Maka King, Brent Coleman, right, Foxy, Omar, and the like. So yeah, maybe I can criticize the fact that Mishak's the only one back there. Like, why? I mean, yeah, we just, we get cut open on the counter, and Armando Moreno, I mean, he made Mishak look like a fool, I have to say. Not that I think there was much Mishak could do there, but just, in terms of straight up athleticism, it just was a mismatch, and he kind of turns him inside out. And then he squares it really well to David Estrada after making Logan commit to trying to, close that angle down. So it was just really sharp counterattacking play. And I mean, the worst, second to the goal, the worst part of that is watching Mishak just kind of ball watch and then tunnel right into Logan Ketterer. So the whole thing is just ugly and not the way you want to start. But at that point, it's like, great. Are we playing the occasion and not the match? Because this isn't great. Not a great start.
Right. Well, and I think that's what's frustrating about it is we know that New Mexico thrives on two things in their system, or at least the way that they've set up against us recently. And that is they look for those opportunities on the counter. I mean, it's more often than not, like that's how they're going to try to score. They're not a big like build up team. They don't play like to use a basketball term, Christian, like they don't play the half court offense. Like they don't set up, they play in transition like all the time. And so in this case, it's frustrating because we know that that's what they're going to thrive on. And so I think, unfortunately, in this case, the corner itself is not great. The ball in is kind of easily cut out. And when we're set up the way that we are against a team that's going to look for those counters, like the onus is a little bit on the corner taker to make sure that the corner is at least not going to be cut out and immediately able to be played forward. So I think the near post routine like kind of bit us a little bit, but Mikka brought up Mishak. I mean, for you, Christian, in that situation, Mishak kind of has to do something, like whether he intercepts or whether he wins the ball or not. Like, should he just foul him and at least like take a yellow and then just move on? Like, or is it too early to take the yellow? Like, do you think that he had other options?
I don't know. I mean, because I don't know exactly what the rule is, and even if that applies in our league. But I mean, he was, I don't like the last man back kind of thing. Is that a yellow or is that a red at that point? So it's a tough one. I don't think intentionally fouling there was the right call. It, like Mikka said, it looks bad, how Moreno plays through him there, but I don't necessarily hold it against him too much. Like, also, like Mikka brought up, like he's the only one back there at that point.
Right.
And it's not his job to kind of match with these guys athletically. It's all about positioning. And if we get caught out, it's not like he was the only one that was out of position. The whole team is up forward on the field. So I don't think there was anything that he could do about it. And I'm the first one this year to say that, this year that he's not having a good year, but that wasn't, I don't think, something that should fall on him.
And I think he's, I think in a perfect world he wins the ball, but like, as you said, Mikka, Moreno does a really good job, and credit has to be given to him for that initial move, and then having the presence of mind to cut the ball back, because it would have been pretty easy to take on the shot himself and kind of go for glory. So keeping his head up, and they eventually do take the lead, but it did feel all too familiar for Locomotive. But luckily they stick with it. They remained on top throughout the first half, I think, in terms of like chances created and all of that. But they stick with it as well from a corner, and Maka King flying in at the back post. we talked so much last season, Mikka, about set piece goals, and now it seems like we're scoring from set pieces like more frequently than we score from open play.
Yeah, right. It's funny how that works out. I feel like it's made its way around the league, around the Western Conference, that we don't really score from these types of scenarios, because this is the second game in a row that this towering defender is totally unmarked. I mean, Maka's, first of all, the corner is much better than the first one Dylan took. But I mean, he finds Maka at the back post, and he heads it down, which is actually pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
And then it makes its way over the line, and fair play to Fox, he did not touch the ball. So that could be Maka's goal. But I mean, let's keep it going. People, still think that we don't score from these opportunities. Let's just continue to take them, I guess. But I was happy that we were able to restore parity quickly, relatively quickly anyway. It was only about 10 to 12 minutes after we conceded the opener. So, because the longer you go without trying to turn the tide in your favor, the worse it feels, and the less it feels like you can get something out of this. So I was happy in that regard too. It gave us a bit more confidence, I guess you could say.
I think that's a really good point about getting it back level fairly quickly. Because I mean, Christian, in the past, we've seen teams kind of wear Locomotive out, in the sense that we've been the better team, we've been on top, but we don't get that goal soon enough, and we kind of start to feel like it's never going to come. Is that, I mean, that played a pretty important role in this one, it seems like.
Yeah, every time, the quicker you can equalize, I think that has a huge impact on your mindset for the rest of the game. And so to be able to do it in that 10 minutes, like Mikka said, I think that really keeps everyone checked in and kind of allows them to keep growing into the game, especially when it's so early.
The unfortunate thing for Locomotive in this one is they can't get out of the half without conceding again. And in this case, there's a bit of a mix-up. Mikka, this goal, I don't know if it gave you deja vu, but this brought me back to the loss against United. We conceded straight from that situation, a couple of bad back passes. In this case, a bad back pass turns into an easy opportunity and puts Maka King into a tough situation, fouls a United player, they get a penalty, and Devin Sandoval is able to convert. Did you get a little bit of deja vu watching that goal back? And why is it that we only seem to make these type of mistakes against New Mexico?
I don't know. This is one of those things that must just be a mental thing, because the mistake is made by Richie Ryan, who is, one of the senior players in our squad, the captain, that deep lying midfielder who is expected to retain possession if nothing else, and we give Richie a lot of credit on this podcast for those one-touch passes, but in this situation, it felt like, and maybe this is unfair, but to me, it felt like he was trying really hard to avoid being fouled, so he just gets rid of it, and the pass is so hard that the best first touch in the world couldn't have dealt with that in that position, and Brent is just unlucky there. I mean, I don't know what he could have done with that. He tries to control it, but it just bounces wildly. And then you see like 5 New Mexico United players just flood the attacking third in the box. And at that point, and, Maka has to intervene. I mean, he's nowhere near close to the ball on the replay. Yeah. So the penalty is fair enough. But again, another penalty in this fixture. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I don't know, just poor communication, poor decision-making all around on that one.
This particular goal has kind of a weird effect, Christian, because I think a lot of times as we speak about like how important it is to score at certain moments, or like we just talked about with the equalizer, scoring within a certain time to be able to make you feel like you're in the game and give yourself this boost. Oftentimes we speak about goals right before halftime being like a hammer blow to the mentality of a team. The impact of this goal almost felt like the opposite, where Lokomotiv was kind of on top, was enjoying like more chances, but not really like getting after it, just like really dominating. This goal goes in, they go into halftime, and Lokomotiv came out like New Mexico had like made fun of their mom or something. Like, did this goal actually have the reverse impact where Mark could go in and have kind of that maybe more intense talk with the team? Because it seemed like they came out even more motivated having giving up that goal right before halftime.
Yeah, I think it was just a game that they wanted to win, honestly. I don't think that the goal had a huge impact on it. I think that they came out that way regardless of what happens. I think it helps being at home. I think that it's a lot easier going into the tunnel when you're losing at home than when you're on the road. So I think that, especially because they played good, for the overall, they played a good game. So I don't think they really had anything to be too hard on themselves on, other than the fact that the two big mistakes that they made led to the goals. So I think that they were going to come out the way they did regardless of the score.
They do come out in the second half, Mikka. I mean, they came out with their hair on fire. Like, they were absolutely getting after it. But one player in particular seemed to just have, he had a good night across the 90, but the second half really belonged to one player in blue for Lokomotiv, and it was Omar Salgado. Omar in the second half looked, I think we talked, and even Mark has mentioned, kind of pre-goal and post-goal Omar. In this case, it was like first half Omar and second half Omar. First half Omar was like right on the edge of making something happen, kind of like almost there. Second half Omar was like, we're going to win this game.
Yeah, I was having a hard time keeping up with tweeting the play-by-play, because so much was happening right from, the whistle for the second half. We had so many shots, majority of which were blocked. And then I think it's almost fitting that the equalizer is an own goal, because it's like, well, we're taking so many shots. Apparently we're not going to score them ourselves. And then Omar squares it. I don't know who he was looking for, to be quite honest with you, but it just comes off Austin Yearwood, and we're back in it.
Yeah.
Omar was incredible. Something that I've noticed about him in this return to play is it seems like he is controlling his emotions a bit better on the pitch and focusing, I think, that energy more into how he actually plays. We've talked a lot about how the final ball is almost always not there, but tonight, or, the other night, I feel like his passing and his crosses were actually weighted really nicely.
Yeah.
I think it was a really, really good game from him in that regard. That balls that he was trying were finding the intended target, or at least causing some kind of issue for New Mexico United's defense. But I mean, Omar he was incredible, really.
It's kind of crazy because we often talk about Omar as being kind of wasteful, or however you want to say, overhitting crosses, overhitting shots. In this one, I think it's worth bringing up the fact that stats wise, he is one of the best players on the field, just doesn't have a goal to his name. He has a few shots off target. But what was most impressive to me was his dribbling, obviously, but he also ends with 5 chances created, which is more than anyone on the field. And we've known Dylan to be kind of the creator in this side, or the most creative player in this side. But in this one, Omar carried that mantle. And I think in this particular game as well, we saw that, I mean, we often speak about how strong a player like Kalen Ryden is. And we know the quality that New Mexico United have through the center of the field. And And in this game, and especially in the second half, we finally saw us exploit what could be seen as their biggest weakness, which is their defending in wide areas. And to see Omar having a good game at a time when New Mexico United's fullbacks were also struggling is just refreshing, because I feel like Locomotive don't have that kind of timing in terms of finding the weakness and exploiting it. But in this one, Omar absolutely did. I mean, Christian, the second half, the whole game was a little bit chippy, a little bit back and forth, a lot of emotion in this one. And the second half, especially, it felt like there were a lot of people right on the edge of kind of the physicality of the game, where there was a lot of challenges flying in, maybe a little bit of shithousery on both sides. What did you make of this as kind of like, so did this game kind of start to solidify the rivalry for you? Like, not just between the fans, but for the players also?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's already been settled before. Honestly, I think that animosity, for lack of a better word, I know they're all doing their jobs, and I think they all understand that. But during the 90 minutes, I think that distaste for each other has already been established. And honestly, I thought it was one of the less chippy games, in the all-time series. I think that it was more controlled, and maybe that's kind of the difference maker for us, is us maybe keeping a cooler head about things. Because to me, there's not that many moments where I can say, wow, like this is going to get out of hand soon. And that might also be credit to the official too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think we often criticize the referees, but I think in this one we can give credit, because the couple of big calls that he had to make, really the one was the penalty. And I do think, despite this being a Locomotive podcast, I think he got it right. It's a pretty clear foul. But he did a good job of utilizing those bookings to keep people under control as well. But didn't get too kind of cavalier with handing out yellows as kind of a way of showing that he's in control. So he did do a good job, it seemed, of managing the game and managing that, keeping the emotions below a boil and not bubbling over. Mikka, we've often seen in these games New Mexico United take their opportunities on the counter and then do their best to just frustrate for the remainder of the 90. And that's exactly what happened in the last loss. Like, Locomotive kind of ran out of time to find that equalizer. In this one, it seems like Locomotive just had sustained pressure after halftime and never really let United get comfortable sitting back and defending.
Yeah. In this return to play, we've seen so many different identities from United. It's really interesting. Like you said, like you spoke about, it was kind of a Jose Mourinho-esque performance last time out with, just trying to hold on and see it through. And this one, I don't know if that's what they were trying to do, but if they were, it certainly didn't work out in their favor, because it just was wave after wave of Locomotive attack, and mostly led by Omar, just destroying that left flank. And this is something that Chris and I spoke about on Seek and Strike. Before the matches, he was saying, I'm really interested to see who defends Omar, because that's a weakness for us, and sure enough. So, yeah, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in the locker room during the half to see what it was that Mark Lowry said to these guys to make them come out with such ferocity, I guess, or if he even had to say anything. I mean, these guys know what the stakes are, in terms of our group play and what the fans expect. So
there's been a few times this season where I've sat back and thought, like, I'm watching Locomotive and I've thought, this is different from last year. The first time that it happened was the first 10 minutes of the game against Orange County, where we just pressed the absolute shit out of them. on the road. And I thought, this is not like, this is so much different than last year. And I think watching the second half was the same, because last year, and I'm not trying to like disparage the Locomotive of last season, Western Conference finalists and all of that. Like, I'm not trying to disparage them at all. But I don't know that last year's Locomotive find a way to win this game. And so for them to come out like they did in the second half, maybe very late edition Locomotive find a way to win this, like playoff Locomotive find a way to win this. But for most of last season, this is a game that we at best get a point from. And in this one, it was so refreshing to see so many players start to click in that second half. And in particular, I mean, we're going to talk about Omar because he does have the 2 assists, but in that winner, it is one of the iconic, like, fullback destructions. David Najem is literally left for dead in that he's laying on the ground on the sidelines as Omar crosses to Mahrez. But we do have to give some credit too. I mean, Mikka, one of your favorite things, the late run from Dylan Mahrez,
hashtag late runs
onto into the area. He makes his way in, and it is a really good finish from Dylan as well to win it late on, because would have been easy to kind of let that get to your head and not put that on target.
Yeah, I was scared when I saw Omar starting to pull it back and try to cut across, because I'm like, oh no, is this we question his decision making sometimes, but it ends up being the right decision, and Dylan's able to, score first time, and it's just pandemonium at the swap. I do want to point out too, though, that in watching it back, Leandro Cajillo makes this really intelligent run to the far post that just takes the defender out of the shooting lane, and Dylan's got more space to shoot at than he would have had otherwise. So that's just really good striker play from Cajillo. It won't show up on the stats sheet, but the whole sequence was just really, really good football.
Christian, I mean, I feel like it says a lot when a goal scorer, rather than celebrating their goal, actually runs to the player who assisted it and celebrates with them, or almost emphasizes them over themselves. Dylan, in this case, runs straight to Omar and celebrates with him. It says a lot about the creation of that goal and how influential Omar was in this one.
Yeah, I think so. And as the other thing that I personally want to point out, just because I've grown to really, really like him, is I think Dylan is just one of those guys who's just a great teammate. On our interview with him, he's very, I guess, soft-spoken is a way of putting it. He's there to play soccer. And, I think that he feels that he's lucky to be doing that. And so he just appreciates the game. And I just think that having a guy on your team like that, who is, a focal point of the attack, it might be easier to do that when you're a defender. There's not a lot of glory in, being a center back or something, but when you're an athletic and gifted, attacking player, I think it can be easy to kind of want to be the center of attention. And I think that Dylan does a good job and isn't that necessarily that type of player, which is something that I really like to see. It's something that I've really liked about him. So I think that contributes a lot to it too. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny, Mikka brought up Leandro Cajillo, and you have been clamoring and wanting to see more of, along with a lot of Locomotive fans, wanting to see more of Leandro in blue and white for Locomotive. We got a little bit more of a taste, and he does seem, as Mikka kind of pointed out, he seems like his game sense is just so good in terms of and I think he should have drawn a couple more fouls in his hold-up play. He was really like trying to back into defenders. He was trying to win those free kicks, even when he didn't really have anywhere to go. Did you like what you saw from Leandro in this kind of first real cameo we got to see from him?
Well, Christian, I think you willed it into existence, right, with the Bravo scarf?
I hope so. I mean, I'll take it again next week. I'll keep it just in the pocket if I'm in the dugout with you, and kind of just sneak it out at the last second if I have to.
No, yeah, I was happy to see Leandro make it into the match at a time that didn't feel totally sarcastic. So thank you, Mark, for that. From what little I could see, he seems just like a pretty old-fashioned center forward with maybe a little bit of the flair that some of the Brazilian players are known for. But again, you won't notice it, and it's a small thing, and you do expect strikers to do that. But I just really love the run that he made to make that space for Dylan's winner. I can see maybe Josue or somebody else in that position just kind of like deflecting the ball. He knows that pass is coming. And so hopefully we'll see more of that and see really how experienced and intelligent he is as a player. But yeah, it was good for him to get a run out. He of course was warming up beforehand and seems like he's starting to gel with the team a little bit more. So good stuff. I
love the idea too of Josue getting a chance to learn from him as well. Mm-hmm. He was obviously training with Bravos, but I don't know the extent to which Gomez was training with the first team at that time in his Bravos career, because I think he was primarily part of like the youth setup, or only played in the cups. So how much interaction was there? Not really sure. But I do love the idea of Gomez, who is kind of this energetic, not really a pure number 9 in a lot of ways. I love the idea of him getting some of those qualities, I guess, or being able to learn a little bit from an experienced striker like Leandro, because it just adds like maybe a little bit something different to Gomez's game. If he can kind of not understudy because he's a starter. That seems so stupid, but if he can learn and kind of glean some things from Leandro, it maybe presents a cool opportunity for him. But Lokomotiv get the win. It's a huge boost, obviously, to their hopes of winning the group. They're now just 2 points behind United with a game in hand in Group C. I think we can almost safely say that Lokomotiv and United are the 2 playoff teams out of Group C. It's just not been a great start for Monarchs or Switchbacks. But the craziest thing about this game, I think, maybe, is that our very own Austin Young, who could not join us tonight, we joked as we got ready to do our score predictions. When Austin was about to give his, I think I literally said, "Tell us what's going to happen." I mean, Christian, he literally told us what was going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much. He nailed that score. That's as good as you can do. He got that score exactly right. And the craziest thing is, it's one of those things that almost wasn't. The fact that just the way the game was, it could have very easily been a different scoreline, but
right, because
Austin spoke it became so.
So Ostradamus, as he's been dubbed by I believe Lou was the first one to float that out on Twitter, but that leaves us in a pretty tough spot, I think, in the prediction standings. Austin way out in front, just Liverpooling right now, just running away with the title. Where do we stand after this result for Lokomotiv, Chris?
So Austin is still in first place, obviously. I will say he didn't get the fabled 4 points like he did earlier in the season, because he did say that Leandro was going to score. But he does get 3 for the results and the score. So he's sitting at 17. Mikka had slowed down a little this week. She picked a draw, but Mares did score, which was her prediction. So she gets a point for picking the goal scorer. So she's in second place with 11. I'm creeping up behind. I broke the deadlock, Phil, unfortunately. You picked a 3-1 win, so you got the win correct, but picked a Gomez goal. I had picked a 1-1 draw, but with a Mares. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. We are in this. We're still tied.
Right.
I'd given myself 2 points, but I forgot that I picked a draw.
Oh, okay.
So we're still tied, unfortunately, at 7. 4 points behind Mikka. So anything can happen still.
Yep. It's still all in the balance. But yeah, Austin, I guess he was just a goal scorer.
Some of our listeners are like calling for the competition to be over because of that prediction.
If he had said like, and Mares grabs the winner, then I would have been
fucking shook.
Yeah.
I was shook.
I was
still
shook already. Yeah. Oh man. But, as in this game, as with any game, we have to identify our shit houses. I know Christian may have a controversial pick on this. But do we have any nominations for the Shithouse 11?
I mean, I don't think it's controversial at all. Like, what the fuck? So, I mean, my call this week is, I think Mikka will be very happy about it, is I think that Drew Becky is going to make his appearance because who gets a yellow card from the sideline? Like,
oh my goodness.
Like, for dissent, I think, because like, he didn't like grab a ball or anything. Like, I think it was totally just words. I think
it was time wasting. Technically, I think he does pick the ball up. It goes out for a throw. He picks it up. And I think he actually made an appeal to the referee that, they weren't supposed to use, like, cause someone else had grabbed it and it like flew over there. And I think he was literally making the appeal that they're supposed to disinfect the balls first. Before they go back into play. So I think he was literally making the appeal that like, you can't use this ball. How could I be booked for time wasting?
I think that just made my case that much stronger knowing that.
Yeah, no, I have no nominations because now that I have that angle of the story, like, bruh, like using this global pandemic as part of your shithousery, I love it. Like he has to get in the.
Well, it is.
We need to build this back line of our shithouse 11.
Yeah, I mean, he's in at that rate. So Drew Becky, welcome to the Shithouse 11. In this case, it's a game where shithousery has often been seen, but I think most often we're used to United shithousery because we haven't had the lead that often late in games. So we're trying to see this one out. And I also have to give like a honorable mention to Logan. He gets wiped out on a ball over, like a ball into the box. Forward, absolutely. I can't even remember who it was, but clears Logan out. It's a clear foul. And the clock ticks across 95 in the meantime. And Logan, having been fouled, goes ahead, sets the ball down, kind of like stretches his back, works his shoulder out because he got ran into. It's just like, so he takes almost like 35 seconds to take the ensuing free kick, which is just, to me, was poetic because we often criticize Mizell for his like time wasting and shithousery, but Logan employing some of the dark arts to get us across the final whistle in this one. So not Shithouse 11 worthy, but I see you, Logan. I see what you're doing. So guys, last thing to address in this one, the game changer for you, and Mikka, we can start with you. Just who for you is the one who brought this win home for Locomotive?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the very literal definition of the term game changer. Omar came out in the second half and just dialed it up a couple notches for us, to the eighth notch, you might say. But I think Omar definitely changed the game for us. He was so influential in that second half. I don't think we get the result without him just barreling down that left flank and bursting past his marker, squaring the ball perfectly for the late winner, and just, playing for the team, honestly, playing for the team, playing for his hometown in a big match in front of the largest crowd that we've had at SWAP in quite a while. So Omar Salgado was the game changer for me.
Christian, any other thoughts?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Omar is the answer. I don't think there's really another appropriate response there, but I did want to just kind of point out kind of another thing that stood out to me is that, have our other defensive signing, scoring a goal for us.
Yeah.
So that Coleman and King have been the difference makers for us not necessarily difference makers, but have had an impact on the scoreboard for us in consecutive games, I think is just something that needs to be pointed out again. Because it says, just like we said last week, it says a lot about how, the guys in the front office do know what they're doing. And it also just says that, these guys are here to play. And I think that they have combined with the team very quickly and adjusted very quickly.
Yeah, I think King and Coleman are, in terms of immediate impact, might be Locomotive's best signings in terms of, like, I don't know that we've ever seen players kind of hit the ground running the way that they have. So yeah, tons of credit to those guys for their ability to, like, immediately kind of mesh with the team. I mean, Maka looks completely at home at that right back spot. And Brent, I mean, he looks like he's been playing, like, the players are changing around him. Chiro, Mishak, like, his partner in central defense is changing, but he's still able to put in a solid performance. And I think that's a great shout that those signings have just really, I think, come at a good time for us. And it definitely gives us a lot to look forward to in terms of what the team will look like for next season as well, because I think Maka in particular was kind of one for the future, if you will, like one that Mark signed with next season in mind. But he's been able to test out this little experiment with Brahim in midfield and Maka back there, and it's worked out quite well in recent games. So credit to the team for making those signings and Mark making those signings that, quote, won't make sense right now. And they are making sense in terms of making Locomotive a cohesive unit. Well, that is it for the game. But there was a lot more to talk about after the game. We are going to take a quick break, and then we'll discuss all the fallout of this result on social media. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Seriously Loco. Guys, we've got a little bit of a weird conversation to have, I guess, in a lot of ways, because we've talked a lot about the match, but there was a lot that happened after the match that was noteworthy, and in particular, the reaction of some New Mexico United fans and New Mexico United's SG, the curse, towards Locomotive kind of in general on Twitter. And so I just want to read this statement, and then we can just kind of talk about it. But so a New Mexico United fan who attended the match, I believe, said, when El Paso Locomotive fans throw the F-bomb and middle finger to their visitors, wait, so y'all get mad when you win too? Stay classy, shrug emoji. Not that shocking of an experience, I guess, from a fan, like at an away match. But the curse, quote tweeted this, and said, in our experience, this is just how they've largely been. Certainly the most consistently angry fan base we've dealt with. It's a shame because the team is usually good, but you can't really have any fun with people that angry. So, I mean, Mikka, we'll start with you. I was taken a little bit aback by the Curses comments because I think they're a pretty well marketed and they're very kind of corporate, I guess, in their vibe. It was a little weird to see them take a stand like this.
It was pretty bizarre in my estimation as well. And I think that I just find it very interesting that, as you say, a pretty sanitized supporters group, as it were, would come out and make this kind of statement, especially because it's such a generalization, you know. I'm not discounting this person's experience. In my opinion, it's like par for the course. But if she was really bothered by it, then she's allowed to feel that way. He or she, I can't remember who it might have been, but pretty shocking for the supporters group to come out and kind of just generalize El Paso Locomotive's fan base, and then they try to walk that back because that's how people took it. Is like, you're saying we're such a bad fan base, and they're like, oh no, that's not what that was. And obviously I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the time to read it all to our listeners here, but really, really an interesting one. I mean, there's always going to be banter back and forth, and it is a rivalry, and I was expecting a little bit of a meltdown, to be honest, because they're so used to winning this fixture and they didn't this time. And a lot of hurt feelings in the land of enchantment, and I'm loving it, to be honest.
Christian, I mean, we spoke about the fact that during the game, there wasn't really like any contentious moments in terms of like the refereeing decisions or something like that. Do you think it almost lends itself to the lashing out being towards El Paso's fans just because there wasn't something else to hang on to? Like, oh, you got lucky because you got that penalty call or something like that. Do you think that almost made it where we were always the most likely target, I guess, of New Mexico's salt?
I guess so. I mean, the emotion has to go somewhere, right? Like it's not healthy to bottle it up, I suppose. So you've got to do something with it. But it's a little. I think what is most shocking to me isn't necessarily the feelings, but like what I perceive as like surprise. Like, it's a professional sporting event. Like, this happens at literally every professional sporting event ever. I refuse to believe that anywhere, including in New Mexico, that after the game is over, that, all the fans from opposing teams shake hands and invite each other over to their houses for drinks. Like, that's just that's not the way it works.
That's what I mean. I guess that's something that, like, it's not just soccer. And this isn't just me saying like, oh, like, toughen up, get over it or whatever. But like, if I show up to I grew up outside of Chicago. If I show up to a Cubs White Sox like crosstown game, and I show up at Guaranteed Rate Field, the artist formerly known as Comiskey Park, like if I show up at the White Sox Stadium in Cub stuff, like I fully expect to get shit from the people around me. Like, I know that I'm going to hear about it, and especially if they win, I know I'm going to get shit about it. Like, that is just like sports. I don't know if it's just something that I'm used to being in that sort of like rabid kind of like sports crazy sort of area, but I've never attended a sporting event where I haven't heard some foul language and some like shit talking between the fan base. Like, it's just part of it. And I think it's part of the, it's not, I don't think it's anything personal. Like 99 times out of 100, it's strictly like, you're wearing those colors, I'm wearing these colors. It's at the game. like it's especially during the 90 minutes. I don't know. Like there's a lot of stuff that's fair game. Obviously not crossing any lines of personal attacks or any sort of like racism, misogyny, anything like that. But like if it's just shit talking, like because you're a United fan, I'm a Locomotive fan. I just don't get how that's something that we need to legislate like after, or like litigate, I guess I should say, like after the game, like, oh, did some fans cross the line by shouting like obscenities at an opposing fan? It wouldn't be talked about at any other sporting event. And now it's being used as a stick to generalize and beat Eighth Notch with. And that just doesn't seem like something that should ever need to be done. I don't know. That's just like who's ever come away from a sporting event thinking like, oh my God, they made fun of me. Like,
yeah,
some of the shit at like my high school basketball games was worse than F-bomb and middle fingers. Like there was a lot worse shit said about us at basketball games than, you know, at this particular match. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think part of what I want to make sure is understood is that as of now, you know, from where this argument started, my understanding is that none of it was personal. Like none of the complaints were like, oh, like someone came up and called me a hoe, you know, whatever. like that has not been what was out there. So before anyone tries to turn that into that, you know, later on, like that was not where this started.
Right.
So I think that should be stated clearly. I think the other thing that stood out to me is that some of the complaints were like, oh, like they were cursing at the referee. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And so I just think that's I think it's just the content more than anything is what's confusing about it.
Right.
And I think that, I don't know. It seems that it's just one of those things that is maybe a culture shock to you. Like you said, if you're not a like sports fan, like if that's not something that you identify yourself as someone who builds a section of their life around going to and participating in sports events, I think that it's surprising.
Sure.
I think that it may come as a little bit of a culture shock. So that's kind of what I have to chalk it up to as far as, you know, people's feelings getting hurt, because like Mikka said, if their feelings are hurt, you know, that's their feelings. But I don't think that it's time to change the culture of sporting events because someone's feelings got hurt.
And I think the issue is exactly what you're talking about, kind of generalized banter or generalized kind of, you know, supporter shouts or whatever were then turned into a generalized attack on Eighth Notch, which is just sort of uncalled for. I don't know that I was just kind of blown away, I guess, by the idea that something that happens during the 90 minutes of a game between two teams that are rivals and are regional rivals could turn into then, well, they're just not good people, which is essentially the Curse's statement. Like, well, they're just angry all the time, which is just a strange sentiment to me, because I haven't found that to be true. I think Phoenix fans who visited here last year, like literally hung out with Eighth Notch at the bar, went to the game, and for 90 minutes, obviously they were rivals and foes. But, you know, before, after, it was just kind of that camaraderie between supporters. So it's definitely not as toxic as, say, something in England, like Liverpool and Manchester United fans aren't getting together pregame and, you know, sipping drinks down at the pub. Like that's not the culture. So I think the idea of coming out and then using an isolated incident to make this kind of generalized statement is just so kind of uncalled for. And they do carry like quite a bit of clout in terms of there's a lot of big social media accounts that follow them. So now like there's people making retweets like uneducated, in a lot of ways where out of context, they're just retweeting this and being like, anyone who does this is like fucked up. And now a lot of people are seeing that. And it's just a misrepresentation of what Eighth Notch is all about ultimately.
100%. And I think that the curse should take that into consideration the next time, and that's the thing about this that Christian kind of gives his, and I agree with a lot of what Christian was saying, that, maybe some people just aren't accustomed to this kind of atmosphere and the culture in general surrounding professional sport, and especially a rivalry like this. But I have my doubts about whether some of these grievances that some of these fans are coming up with are even in good faith, because they were presented with evidence of their supporters doing similar things, if not worse. And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, that's just how we respond to you. And it's like, well, wait a minute, this fixture was last year.
Right.
The famous beer throwing incident. Their fans flipping off our fans when we've gone up to the lap to watch an away match. So it's like, I tend to think it's more about you're upset that you lost and you're trying to deflect, and we all do that, but when you are generalizing an entire fan base, with a pretty influential Twitter account, I would say that's a little bit problematic for me and not in good taste and not in good faith.
Yeah. It's been definitely a weird couple of days on social media, but we had our social media days brightened by Austin, who's just having an absolute, he's on a tear right now. He's been killing it. But he did come up with that, with the meme of The Office, which you guys can check out on I think it's our pinned tweet right now. So you can check us out at Seriously Loco and see the masterpiece that Austin Young put together in response to this. Mikka, there was one tweet in particular that kind of came through in response to some of this, the frustration bubbling over from New Mexico fans. Little bit of humor in this one, in that this particular fan accused Locomotive and Mark Lowry's team of playing hit and hope, I think was his words, but basically accusing them of hoofing it forward and just hoping something happens. Little bit of humor, I guess, on the timeline for us.
again, just some of these comments are not in good faith, because you can accuse Locomotive of many things, but playing long ball with no set goal in mind is not one of them. And some of the stats that were cited didn't even support that or weren't even relevant at all. So yeah, I do take issue with that, because we as a club are very much wedded to our philosophy. There's a lot of buy-in from our fans in Mark Lowry's philosophy. And so these flippant comments about hoofball are just, bullshit, quite frankly. And I'm happy to put that on the record. So.
And I think going along with kind of that, there's two things that El Paso and El Pasoans in general kind of attach themselves to. And that's one, they have this kind of rabid defense of their teams. And, I mean, no one will mock a UTEP football team harder than someone from El Paso, but the second someone else takes a shot, they will come to their defense. And I think same goes for Locomotive, same goes for Eighth Notch. But, one of the things too about El Paso is that, I mean, I have many friends in El Paso who would just as soon roast me about something, and it's not done in any sort of malice. It's not done for any sort of personal attack. It's just part of kind of the culture and part of, that banter back and forth is just part of what goes on in El Paso to an extent. And I think the culture of El Paso kind of lends itself to, it's not meant to be, there's no grudges that are meant to be held from this sort of back and forth. It's just supposed to be, hey, we make fun of you, you make fun of me. And then we just get on with our days. And that's kind of ingrained in the culture. yeah, it was just so strange and kind of gave me this little bit of cognitive dissonance of like, wait, why are they mad about this? And why are they using this like official platform to take a stand about this specifically? It just seemed like a very strange move on the Curse's part. Again, it's nothing personally against the Curse. It's just, I guess don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. And that's,
beers.
Or beers in this case. But that was the fallout. I mean, any final thoughts on that one before we head to our next break? Am I missing anything?
All I would say, just to close it out, is don't pretend that we're not rivals anymore. There's this air of elitism, I think, that comes from the United end about how, this is not a rivalry. Our eyes are on Phoenix. It's like, clearly it is, because you're upset. So you're upset to have lost, and you should be. But yeah. That's all really. Yeah.
They and I will just add with, they started the beef yesterday and then tweeted today about how, like, imagine still being upset about this like a day and a half later. This beef was started by y'all. Like, this was not this was not us. You guys, that'd be like me punching somebody and then them punching me back and me being like, wow, I can't believe you actually like cared that I hit you.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah. That's the beef, and we're gonna just move swiftly on. We'll take one more quick break, and then it's on to the next match against San Antonio FC. Welcome back to Seriously Loco. It is time for our match preview of the match coming up this Saturday against San Antonio FC. And I mean, Christian, as a former San Antonio resident, I think we'll start things off with you. But this San Antonio team this year, I mean, previewing them last season, we didn't have a great deal of luck against them last year. We played in a beach volleyball pit down in San Antonio, but then we got roughed up by them at the SWUP last year. Bit of a tough game. But this San Antonio FC team, a very different prospect than what we faced last year. That SAFC team famously missing the playoffs on the last day. This one, top of the group and unbeaten so far. I mean, what do you make of this revival from San Antonio?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very surprising in that I don't think that at the beginning of the season that anyone, at least from our group, was counting on San Antonio being a top half of the table team, much less being the top team, like from both sides of the country. So I think it's just very surprising. And it's very San Antonio, I will say. It's very Spursy. San Antonio Spurs, Mikka. Don't get triggered. It's very Spursy in the sense that, like, I don't think that even now, like they're not the team that's on the the USL like cover page. Still flying under the radar, even though they're clearly the best team in the country right now. So it's very familiar to me as a former San Antonian, seeing this kind of thing. And so to me, it worries me. It makes me just think that we should be that more scared of them, because usually they come out and punch you in the mouth.
Mikka, we talked before we started recording that this kind of revival from San Antonio is being spurred on in many ways by an Argentinian core of this team. And recently, Luis Solignac, I mean, this man has been scoring goals for fun for San Antonio. Gonzalo Dorenzo as well, owner of maybe the shortest shorts in the league. What do you make of this kind of Argentinian vibe that San Antonio has cultivated in this restart?
I mean, it's not a bad strategy at all to go shopping in Argentina for talent. Solignac has 6 goals and 4 assists in 11 matches. Only one of those goals is a penalty. So, I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Christian Pirano, of course, young player. I think that there are MLS eyes on him and maybe even higher than that. Looks very promising. He's also got 6 goal involvements. And then Ignacio Bailone, 3 goals, 2 assists. I mean, these Argentinians are going off for SAFC. and with all that attacking output, they're still the best defensive side in the West. They have 6 clean sheets. Yeah. So they really are just the complete package, it would seem. I don't think they've lost even once this season. So I don't know, man. There's just another red and black menace in the West this year. And this could be a preview of what we see in the playoffs. So this is a really big match, and we're on a good run of form as well. So, and we've got a nice little homestand. So I'm hoping that will maybe tip the balance in our favor. But this is probably maybe the second most or equal to Phoenix in terms of a challenge. So we'll have to be really on it for Saturday.
Christian, I mean, you brought it up, like that underrated vibe of San Antonio. There's almost no way that Mark and the team approach it in that way, though, right? Like, they've got to be preparing for this as if they're going up against the Phoenixes of the world this week.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope so. And when I say that, I kind of mean just from the public perspective. I'm sure,
yeah, of course,
that the teams themselves know what they're looking for. So yeah, I think that Mark and the squad are very aware that this is possibly our first playoff game, and so with that in mind, it's kind of interesting. I think they things from it. I think that they want to win this because that puts us ahead of New Mexico on points and pretty much having two guarantees that we can avoid San Antonio in the first round. But also it's one of those things where, how much do you buy into that we're going to get that first place spot, and maybe trying to receive a little more from them, just trying to let San Antonio play a little more and maybe learn a little more about them in case we do get that first round matchup, because that playoff match is more important than this fixture if it happens. So I think it's kind of an interesting balance between how much you let them kind of play their game to scout, I guess, and how much you try and dominate to win the game.
Their last 2 matches, San Antonio played RGV 2 times, scored 3 goals in both, but actually conceded in both as well. And RGV got 2 goals in the last one. Mikka, is there any, maybe in this restart, we've seen some teams kind of start to tire, maybe some cracks forming. Do you think that maybe there's a little bit of vulnerability there over these last 2 games from RGV against San Antonio, or do you think maybe that's just a blip and we'll see the same solidity that saw them, get 2 clean sheets prior to that run against RGV?
Yeah, that was kind of a weird game because they scored all their goals very quickly. And so when I see that, and full disclosure, I didn't get to watch this match, but when I see that, I'm thinking, okay, you want to wrap the game up really quickly and then just manage it, which that, not a bad plan per se, but I don't know that they can necessarily come to the swap and do that. Just because this Locomotive team looks like they have a lot of belief. I mean, against New Mexico United, we score a late one. Against Real Monarchs, we score a late one. I mean, these are fixtures that we probably don't have that belief last season that we can win. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a blip. I think it's too soon to call it that. But I mean, we'll see. Again, I just really hope that the home advantage, I hope that it is an advantage. And from what I'm understanding is there may be an opportunity for more fans to come into the park. But I'm sure there will be an announcement about that soon. So yeah, I don't want to call it a blip. I just maybe the plan just got away from them a little bit there, but they still took the full points, and RGB are looking pretty hopeless. So I think that this fixture in general is just a different prospect altogether.
Mikka mentioned the fans, and Christian, I mean, for the fans, getting a Copa Tejas matchup, even though the Copa is not actually being awarded this year, getting this interstate rivalry rather than intra, this kind of local rivalry as well, getting an edition of this season feels like a little bit of a treat almost in this return to play.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more interesting. I think it would have been nice too, for a lot of reasons. It would have been much nicer to get an Austin game instead of Phoenix. But so to kind of have hit the all four, or all three of the opposing Texas teams this year. But yeah, I think it should be fun. I think that because of the geography that it's not necessarily too much of a rivalry per se. I don't think that we feel that way about this team, but it's fun. It's fun because they are a very talented team right now. So it's always fun to play against the best, and at a point where we're kind of at our best right now. When we're playing Phoenix, we're coming off a disappointing draw and a loss to New Mexico. So maybe not in the best headspace as a fan for that fixture. But right now, I think most people are feeling pretty comfortable and confident with the team. So I think it should be a lot of fun.
I think that the form certainly gives us a lot of confidence. The experimentation that's kind of gone on, we've seen how it can work for Locomotive. We've seen the way that they can set up and still be successful, even missing a couple of key pieces with Nick Ross, and then obviously Chiro and Toka missing out of this last match as well. But I want to get your feelings. Who are you looking out for in this one, either from an opposing perspective of players to watch out for, or players who you're expecting big things from Locomotive? And Mikka, I'll throw it over to you first and foremost.
Oof, okay. Well, for San Antonio, I think it's hard to look past Christian Pirano. I know Luis Solignac has had, by far the most output in terms of goals and assists, but Pirano really is I think the focal point. And he's been, he's I think a central attacking midfielder by trade, but San Antonio have played around with some different systems, and so he's been pretty versatile, I would say. In terms of how he's used. And of course, 3 goals and 2 assists, can't really ignore that from such a young player. So he's one to watch, I think, for San Antonio, but they've just got so many weapons. For us, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think naturally I want to pick Omar just because of the impact he had last time out, and just in general, how he's been playing. In this restart. So yeah, maybe look for Omar to just try and physically dominate. But also Logan Ketter. I mean, we don't speak about him often because he's just consistently good. But with this amount of attacking threat in the side, I think he's gonna be tested early and often. So those two, I would say.
Yeah, I think what's interesting looking at San Antonio's stats is that it's almost reminiscent a little bit of what Locomotive have been able to do in terms of shot generation. So just taking, for example, their last match, 19 shots, 9 on target, which is a really good rate of return for San Antonio with about 52% of the ball and only 73% passing accuracy, but it's kind of reminiscent in terms of output to what Lokomotiv achieved in this last match against New Mexico. So similar kind of shot generation, and certainly if there's 9 shots on target, then Logan will have quite a bit of work to do keeping things in check. I don't think that we'll allow that many shots on target compared to RGV, but we will see what the game holds. Christian, who for you between these teams is really sticking out as an important piece?
Yeah, I think that for San Antonio, it's Parano for me, just because I think that when you have an attacker like Solignac, I think that it's easy to key on an attacker like on a center forward like that. But Parano, I just think that he is the guy that can give everyone else the opportunity. So if he's having a good game, then all 9 other outfield players are weapons.
Sure.
So making sure that we don't let him have too much of the ball, I think is a really important piece.
A little bit of a like Mahrez vibe, essentially. If he's on the ball and doing well, then odds are the attack is in general doing well. Exactly.
And what I saw from New Mexico with Mahrez, when we were watching the game, I had pointed out that, Mahrez had been kind of quiet, and then I started paying attention, and a lot of the times as soon as he touched the ball, there were 3 opponents around him. So I think that we have to adopt maybe a similar strategy of kind of swarming and successfully doing so and not leaving ourselves vulnerable. But for us, I think that it will be important, maybe more so for him, I think, before things maybe start going downhill for himself mentally, as I think it's important for Gomez to get back again. And he hasn't been having bad games. He's had shots, not a lot on target. He always puts in a shift, defensively as far as forwards go. But I think that having him make a direct impact on the game is something that we need to see from him, because it's been a while since we heard his name called.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought it up, because that was exactly where I was going with mine as well. I think he's played well and he's done his job, but certainly from a forward's perspective, like you said, they want goals like that. Ultimately, they're going to judge themselves, and they're going to be judged on the goals they score. And I think I've really appreciated Gomez's willingness to take on shots and be a little bit more aggressive, I guess, in that sense, where he's not waiting for the perfect opportunity necessarily. Like he's sometimes taking the shots on early. And I want to see one pay off, because I know he's been a little bit unlucky between saves and then maybe just dragging the shot wide. So that is, it's funny you brought it up, because that was exactly where my mind was at, as well. And yeah, for San Antonio, I mean, I don't think you can overlook the importance of Christian Parano. But it always scares me, when there's kind of that striker with the chops of Solignac, because it just gives me like Adam John, like nightmares, where he doesn't need a ton. He doesn't need like the perfect chance. He just needs a chance. And the amount of output that he's had, it's just a little bit scary. And I'm hoping that some of San Antonio's output is due to the fact that they've been able to play RGV a bunch, but also the fact that they're playing the Oklahoma teams. And maybe, if we had a shot at the Oklahoma teams, then we would have a little bit more success. Mm-hmm. But no, it's been a great start to the season for San Antonio. And I think the last thing for them before, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but San Antonio are a little bit tough to hate compared to other teams, because their fans are just like so damn welcoming. Like they're so like gregarious, and they're so eager to like welcome you to the tailgate. They want to, like when Eighth Notchers were able to travel to San Antonio last year, like they were, invited to the tailgate. They met a bunch of the SAFC fans. And so, I mean, a big consistent listener of this podcast, Harry, is like consumer of all USL content, is a huge SAFC fan and just so great at like promoting all those things. So to like, I guess, veer away from the conversation we had earlier, San Antonio fans are really good at building those relationships, I guess, between supporters groups. So it's tough because in the 90 minutes, I absolutely will loathe every single player in red and black for San Antonio. But as on a whole, they're a club that I can't hate. I just can't. I can't bring myself to hate on them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I certainly don't think of them as like antagonists in any way. There's a lot to like about that side. I mean, they're well run. They have a really nice stadium, a soccer specific stadium in Toyota Field. Good players, a good coach, and like you said, any San Antonio fan that I've ever interacted with has been, just friendly and just, passionate about the game. And so it's hard to really like find anything wrong with that. So, but we want to win. Period. Yeah. So.
I will give a shout out as well to their head coach Alan Marcina, who would be known to fans of the old edition of San Antonio soccer team, San Antonio Scorpions of the NASL. He started as an assistant there, then became the head coach, was there for a couple of seasons, moved to Rayo OKC, the short-lived NASL project of Rayo Vallecano, and then after a short stint and U.S. Open Cup run, I believe, with Des Moines Menace in the in USL, the PDL. He went back to San Antonio, and now he's there. And I mean, he's having his best ever spell, I think, with the team. And yeah, credit to him and a somewhat of a lower league U.S. legend, I guess, where he was playing in NASL for Miami FC as recently as 2009. So so there's a lot going on in Alan Marcina's career. But San Antonio FC and Locomotive square off on Saturday, and it is that time of the week again. We have one prediction in already from Ostradamus, but we all have to put our predictions in. And Christian, I will throw it over to you to get us kicked off.
Yeah, so Austin chimed in. He went ahead and is predicting a draw, a 1-1 draw. He's thinking Gomez is going to get on the board. Which, I'm hoping is so. I'd be happy with a draw here, and with Gomez scoring. So I'm satisfied with Austin's prediction there. Myself, I'm also expecting a 1-1 draw, but I think that Omar finds the back of the net this game.
That's gosh. I mean, now that I know that Austin's prediction is 1-1, like, how do I go against it? That's the problem. Like, how do you pick against it? Mikka, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, right. It's hard to pick against him after. Oh my God, I don't even know. I'm thinking 2-2. I'm going with a draw as well, but I think there's more goals. 2-2, and I say Omar Salgado scores a goal.
Well, I guess that leaves me. I'm not really sure where to go with this one because San Antonio have been scoring, like, I'd say at least 2 goals a game, but recently it's, you average it out. They're essentially scoring 3 goals a game, the whole return to play. Which is just very disheartening in terms of how we play. But I think if we can stay sharp, I think it's hard to bet against them getting at least 2 goals. But if Logan is on his day, maybe. But I'm going to go, and this is stupid, but I'm going to go back-to-back, 3-2. Locomotive get another like dramatic win at home in front of fans, maybe more than what they've seen. And I will. I'm no dummy. So I'm gonna go for Dylan Mahrez getting another one. Although I do want to see Gomez score, but yeah, we'll go for another crazy one in the swap.
Yeah. I think the Mahrez goal is fair. I think if we score 3 goals, then Mahrez is probably getting one of them. So,
yeah. Gosh, it's a tough game to predict because San Antonio's been so good, but at the same time, I mean, even their game against, I mean, they played pretty well against Tulsa. Couple of red cards in that one for for Tulsa. But all in all, they've just been so good, and Tulsa actually the last team to take a point off them, I believe, all the way back on August 12th. So we'll see if Locomotive can repeat the feat this Saturday. Members of Seriously Loco will certainly be in attendance at the swap, regardless of whatever the capacity is, and we'll have all the coverage of game day from the swap for you there. You can also, if you've enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play are the big ones, but you can find us pretty much anywhere. And after that, you can check us out on social media for the dank memes from Austin. When at Seriously Loco, you can find us on Twitter. And aside from that, we will be back with more and more content. Hopefully, some more written content going up. I've been kind of slacking on my analytics articles. So I'm hoping to bring those back to you on the Patreon, which you can find patreon.com/SeriouslyLoco, where we just unlocked an article from Mikka earlier this week for about the fan experience and soccer in the time of a pandemic. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoy all that. And until next time, stay loco.